Hi, I'm Mike Mulligan. I'm a nuclear safety advocate and a whistleblower. We're going to be talking about Pilgrim's fiasco with the new safety relief valves. Energy purchased new safety relief valves in April, May 2011. I don't know when they purchased them, but that's when they installed them in their plant. And less than a year later, they on December 26, 2011, they had a leaking valve. These new valves leaked, and they had to shut down and replace them and stuff like that. And they went back up to power within a couple of days. The second time this happened was January 20th, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, January 20th, 2013. Again, a different valve leaked and caused them to shut down. Then the third one occurred, the leak occurred February 3rd, 2013, just less than a week ago. And it started leaking, and energy came down in power. They probably cycled the valve, opened and shut, and hopefully it would repair itself. They tried going back up at power, and it started leaking again, so they say, if it ever stopped. And then they were sitting around at 80% power until they luckily hit this blizzard, which caused them to trip off the line. They were probably, they probably realized they have something wrong generically with the target rock relief valves. I mean, why would you you had 3 valves that went bad, brand new valves that went bad. Why would you even want to replace those with the identical valves? I mean, how do you know what was broke on them and stuff like that? On the first DLER in December 2011, it was caused. The leak was caused by an eroded seat and disc on the valve and stuff. We don't know what the other 2 reasons it happened. Well, what we do know is that the industry's in a crisis with the counterfeit and fraudulent repair parts. There's a host of issues running around the industry. They can't get the manufacturers to supply, in a costly manner, the parts they need, and a lot of this stuff is coming up as garbage and stuff like that. So Energy has had a plague of problem with these new valves, which they never had before. So quick with new valves. And this is an event that with SRVs, V-valves, or big ticketed components for nuclear safety that ever failed so quickly, and failed a plague of failures, 3 failures in a row. The first valve that failed in December 2011 was the D valve. January 20th, 2013, that's the second time it failed. What was that, about a year later? The B valve failed, and then 2 weeks after that or so, the B valve started failing again. Can you imagine that? They had to shut down, and within 2 weeks, that same valve started leaking again. This is just engineering incompetence from a host of organizations. Energy was involved with investigation, along with the NRC, along with the Southern Company, along with Target Rock. And the first LER came out. They said it was a eroded valve seat and stem, and there was no cause. They couldn't find a cause. All these organizations couldn't find a cause that did it. Everything was according to specs. They did a thorough inspection and all that sort of stuff, and then all these organizations on the first valve said there's nothing wrong with these valves. with that valve, and then they subsequently had two other valves that failed. If you see what I mean, it's hilarious actually, especially when they had a first opportunity to. They must have. I don't know why they couldn't find what was wrong with it and stuff, but it's just amazing nuclear engineering incompetence on a host of organizations. It's amazing. The second time it happened on January 20th, 2013, that the NRC didn't force them to shut down and find out what was wrong. Well, it didn't force them to have a thorough investigation before they restarted up. Then, of course, 2 weeks later, it failed again. So we're talking here broadly, easily, a condition adverse to quality on these valves that nobody seemed to be able to find. So this is a defect not in a valve component. This is a systemic issue in all valves, right? If they replace all these valves, this shutdown with identical valves, they'd all fail the same way. It'd be crazy if they didn't find out what was wrong with these valves. I called for a special inspection on these valves. We'll see what the NRC does about it, but it doesn't look like they're going to do anything. They might in the next couple of days decide to do one. We all know about the problems with energy with all their recent shutdowns. They're under intense scrutiny in the media with a host of 3 shutdowns, and the NRC has got them gave them a warning if they have one more shutdown, which they had over this blizzard, that they're going to do more inspections activities. Root cause and analysis with what is there something causing all these shutdowns and stuff like that. I think the energy was fearful of that, and they on this third shot on February 3rd, the delay and stuff. I think that they were trying to wiggle out of it and not have all this scrutiny on the plant. So the first LER, it talks about the detectors that they have, downstream detectors, thermometers that they tell when a relief valve is leaking. This, I get a kick out of this first LER. This is the first one. I want to make sure I'm not screwing this up. Yep, this is the first LER. And so, bang, right off the bat, they say, this event had no impact on the health and safety of the public. Well, that's the first valve. They're going to have 2 more subsequent failures. How do they know in this first valve? How could they make that statement? There's no safety there's no health or safety. There's no impact on health or safety when they didn't know they didn't have the God's eye view. I'll be talking about the God's eye view. That is the perfect view. You have a perfect image on the specifications, the quality of the valve, and the dimensions of all the dimensions of manufacturing and the quality of materials and stuff like that. And if you had the God's eye view, you could, boom, immediately decide if that valve was a good valve or a bad valve. And so you can see right here, this event had no impact on the health and safety of the public. They're blowing out their ass. They have no idea. They didn't do a thorough enough inspection to find out what was wrong with the rest of the valves, the other 2 valves. So and these are very safety-related valves. They use these remotely operated valves in the control room with switches. They use them automatically. Sometimes they'll open, if they want to flood the reactor in a quick manner automatically, they open these valves and they start injecting into the core. if a plant trips, and that's usually the way they control there's a lot of decay heat in the beginning, and the way they control keeping the vessel cool is to open and shut these SRVs. Usually they're not automatic valves. They're usually employees will stand right next to the valve, and in cahoots with other operators, they're watching the feet. They're making sure the vessel is being filled with other components, and they're opening and shutting that valve to either maintain the temperature of the vessel, or to cool down the vessel. They want to cool down the vessel, they open the valves a little bit faster. Usually they cool the vessel down with the Rixie and Hipsy, and usually they'll use the main condenser, which is the safest manner. Usually a hard trip like they had with this blizzard, that usually the main condenser gets isolated, and they have to use a relief valve. That had been a fun thing to watch them crossing their fingers as you were opening these relief valves. This shutdown. Like I've been trying to talk to people. It was this handling this safety relief problem. Not knowing, not doing a proper inspection in the beginning, understanding what was wrong with it, and stuff like that, raises questions of the competence of energy and the NRC. And then you get into this business with the blizzard and stuff like that, and shutdown, and they have their off-site power sources were fluctuating, the opening and shutting like a madman. And stuff like that, and they still didn't have the courage to try and shut down on their own before the blizzard struck. And even as the blizzard was striking and causing a lot of problems out on the transmission system, they still didn't have the integrity to shut down on their own. You see what I'm saying? They have to take a shutdown. They have to take a failure of an equipment to force them to shut down. They can't on their own say, this is the right thing, we're going to shut down and stuff like that, or this is the right thing, we're going to buy quality safety relief valves, or this is the right thing. Once we're going to positively know when we shut down, and before we start up, we're going to positively know what caused that valve failure before we start up again. These shutdowns, these two shutdowns that they had, they basically had 2 days, 3 days. They were shut down for 2 days. It probably took them 24 hours to cool down, and they had a day and a half left to take out those safety relief valves. Usually they unbolt the whole valve out and disconnect it from its nitrogen pneumatics and the electrical system and stuff like that, and they take the whole valve out and they bring it to the shop and they put in a whole new one and stuff. They don't fix valves and that type of. So on these both the two shutdowns, the two prior shutdowns, that's what they did. They took the valve out. They had really very little idea what caused the valve problem, and they started right back up. I mean, that's the problem of this system, is that nobody forces them to know why that valve failed in the beginning. They were allowed to roll the dice and shut their eyes and say, well, if I get a brand new valve, we won't be having the same problem again. And of course, this time they got caught with a systemic problem with the manufacturing of the valves and the design of the valves, not an individual problem, or not a maintenance guy banging the valve around and breaking it, all three valves and stuff like that. Energy and Vermont Yankee had a very similar thing with their safety relief valves. In 2010, they purchased a new, 2008, 2010, they installed them, and within the first cycle, the threaded seals on the actuators, on the actuator pneumatic supply, or diaphragm housing leaked. They wrote up an LER on it. They said it was thermal degradation, and later they come out with all sorts of our dry well was has been hot, and we might have had hot spots in the dry well, and we didn't. The new style valves, we put insulation over so they weren't getting heat. They weren't venting the heat out like they should have been, so there was a higher temperature inside the valve. And they came out with that probably within the first year, and it was absolutely false. Absolutely false. After about a year's time, the NRC came out saying that it wasn't even admitted in the LER that when Vermont Yankee was ordering the valves from the vendor, Target Rock, they knew that they wanted Type 1 valves that could survive 400 degrees. The vendor came back and says, well, we don't got any more Type 1 valves, but we got Type 2 valves that are only good to 225 degrees temperatures and stuff. And nobody next asked the question. They all knew that what question they should have asked. The most important aspect is, what will that valve do in an accident? In an accident situation, the containment can get up to 360 to 400 degrees. And those valves and components have to be, you can't be having plastic parts or gasket material, seal material leaking, because you don't know how the valve will respond in an accident and stuff like that. But they should have known that. But Vermont Yankee chose to accept them Type 2 valves for 230 degrees and stuff. And so then another year goes by, and finally the NRC admits that, Vermont had purchased contractor inspectors, and they came back and said, thermal degradation and all that sort of stuff. Brand new valves, one cycle, thermal degradation. It doesn't make sense. Then you could go in and say, well, okay, maybe we've had higher temperatures in the dry well. Well, that's nuts too, because the dry well temperatures have been essentially the same from one cycle to another cycle and stuff. So there's really no mechanism that you could lead to be thermal degradation. They said, well, it's thermal degradation, maybe one valve. So if we just replace it with the same material, maybe it was a bad lot or something like that. If we replace it with another similar gasket, it won't happen again. But then later down the line, they find out, a year later, that that's not true, because it was the wrong gasket material. It was bunion, and they should have had silicone or another type of material that would last to 400 degrees. When they first installed these valves, it was these seals were made out of asbestos, and that clues you in that asbestos, Teflon are high temperature type of things, and you should replace it with high temperature materials and stuff like that. But why did they replace it with this poor quality 225 degree temperature? So you see what I'm saying here is, LERs are supposed to be high engineering documents. They're supposed to be done by professionals. LERs are not supposed to be comic books where you get the right lies and distortions and half truths and stuff like that. LERs are supposed to be your word, your honor. You throw an LER to the NRC, and that's supposed to be nearly perfect engineering and stuff. The state-of-the-art professionalism of engineering. That first document is not supposed to be a comic book. It's supposed to be the truth. Everything in it's supposed to be the truth and stuff. It doesn't necessarily, the issue is, the issue is not necessarily following the rules, and rules should compel you to tell the truth, and they don't. But you should on your honor fill out these documents honestly and truthfully. And if you can't fill them out truthfully and honestly, then you don't write them. You wait until all the evidence comes in. But nowadays they get the right. They can get the right LERs up in a comic book fashion in the first swipe, and knowingly lying. Then they get to purchase comic book vendors who do investigations in a comic book manner and stuff. And and then they get to operate. Probably when they should have had them replaced, they get to operate with these bad parts and for many years. So that's the history with Vermont Yankee and their SRVs, and Peach Bottom with their SRVs. First of all, the documents are honest and truthful, and nowhere near close to honest and truthful. And the NRC can't come in and look at those documents with an eye of engineering excellence and professionalism and critique these documents, those documents for the state of engineering professionalism. They can't say, oh well, this is inaccurate and you're using uncertainty here when you have to have evidence and certainty, and you're bullshitting right here and stuff like that. And you know what? You're getting a pattern of telling half truths and lies. And maybe if we shut you down for 6 months, maybe you'll come to your senses. But so the NRC can't enforce the truthfulness of these documents. Basically, they just have to. They mostly accept them as is, and they don't want to make waves. And I suspect that the higher ups in the NRC are telling them, you let the utilities write these LERs up in the manner they need to, and you can't critique them until they get into trouble. It doesn't matter if it's truthful or not. So, anyways, we go back to this, the Pilgrim issue here, and so the first LER. These SRVs, in the past they've been implicated in, they pop open out of nowhere, and then the plant has to deal with shutting down a plant in an emergency manner because the valve is open. One of the worst precursors, one of the worst risks to a BWR is a stuck open relief valve. And then they have some sort of other accident, which you get into a loop accident like they had just recently had, and then they get into a blackout event where they lose their diesels. And that stuck open relief valve gets them to the point of core melt a lot quicker and stuff. And of course, like I said, then they normal operation and emergency operations, they open and shut them valves to control reactor temperature, and also it's a prized means of cooling down the plant and allowing the low pressure core cooling systems to kick on. So at the time of the most probable the most probable root cause are problems during the initial manufacturing or assembly of the pilot at Target Rock prior to installation at this site. While laboratories Target Rock and Energy will identify any errors in the manufacturing or assembly of this pilot during this disassembly, inspect the valve and complete the root cause evaluation with that information. So here it is, 3 or 4 months after the incident. The plant's already zinging up at power and all that sort of stuff, and they haven't still decided what caused this thing. It's just it's preposterous that you allow a plant to start up not knowing the reason why a safety component failed. It's preposterous and stuff. You get into these problems where you have repeated failures of components, just like these SRV valves, one after another, and you keep making believe and there's nothing wrong with the valve, and then they fail again, they cause another shutdown, then they fail again, and you just keep going like that. And so And then they're going to do going to do a safety assessment, the leaking SRV and plant shutdown to repair the SRV in accordance with technical specification, blah blah blah, poses no threat to the health and safety of the public. If I wanted to, when the last valve leaked, I asked them to shut down. They'll say, well, Mike, you can't be shutting down a plant. It's a riskful behavior. It drives the plant towards riskful in a riskful manner. It's more safer to be up at power and stuff. But you say, well, why do you set these poorly degraded or poorly manufactured and poor quality components one after another that causes you to have shutdowns? And then they'll tell you, well, it's no safety problem, it's no risk problem, and stuff like that. So, if I want them to shut down, it's a riskful behavior. If they shut down because they're incompetent, it's a safe manner. You see, they're talking out of both sides of their mouths, and so isn't the agency. Brand new valves. There was no previous first stage leakage occurrence with these relief valves, and later on they'll be talking about this is a mature valve. It's been here since the 1970s. It's a mature design valve. They've been around since they invented God and stuff. Well, if it's a mature valve and they know how these valves work since the 1970s, that's 40 years of valve operational experience. How come 3 valves failed in a row? And stuff. How does that fit? Again, talking out of both sides of their mouth. It's a mature design, and then it failed 3 times in the first cycle. So that's the first one, and now we're going to go to the update. 2011-007. So then and how long is this? How long is it's? The event was 12/26/11, and what's the date of this thing? What's the date of this letter? December 21st, 2012. December 21st, 2012, and the first one was the date of the was. It's a year later, right? It's almost a year later, and stuff. And so this is gonna, the plant's been operating, getting ready for another failure. They're right on the edge of another failure and another shutdown. And so this is what they tell everybody, right? Did I tell you that? This event had no impact on the health and safety of the public. If they allow 3 valves to fail, like this, safety valves to fail, it means that there's a systemic problem with the culture of energy. They don't have the ability to immediately understand how components fail and have the wherewithal to fix them immediately. And they're installing bad components in the plant. This is a system. This isn't a component failing. This is a group of people failing. And they really don't. I'd rather have component after component fail in a good group of people, and a good group of people dealing with it, than good components and a bad culture and stuff. A bad culture is they're half blind. And they talked them into some crazy stuff. So now they got the root cause down here. They got the root cause. On March 21st, the pilot assembly and second stage was disassembled. Measurement and tests were performed at various stages of disassembly. Photographs were taken on the components as necessary. Determine the root cause. The joint team of Weil Laboratories, Target Rock Energy, and the Southern Nuclear Company engineering staff worked together to disassemble and inspect the pilot and second stage of the valve. So they got the big guys, the big dogs, all these big engineering. They got Southern Nuclear building a brand new plant there, down south in Republican land, and they got the big dogs, the big engineers, the PhDs, and they're 2 weeks away from another valve failing, right? But look at how timely this thing is. It's a year from when the valve first failed. And you know, Jesus, Southern Nuclear Operating Company engineering staff, you know, what are they in there for? You know, Target Rock probably didn't trust Energy, and Energy didn't trust Target Rock. Where the hell is Wild Labs? You know, they probably just blow in the wind, and whoever pays them, they swing to that direction. And Southern Nuclear Company was probably supposed to be the independent agent in this whole deal. So the following did I tell you? About 2 weeks away for the second valve to start failing, and another 2 weeks after that for the third one to start failing. There was no evidence of a design defect that could be the root cause of the onset of leakage. The basic design of this three-stage valve is mature. The first one was the ones before this were two stages. This is a three-stage mature design valve. Of this three-stage valve, the basic design of this three-stage valve is mature and has been in operation since 1970. But it's a brand new set of four valves that three of them has failed before the first operational cycle, probably 18 months. Within 18 months, 75% failure rate. This three-stage valve is mature and has been in operation since 1970. You know, I love nuclear engineers and these engineering organizations. This absolute certainty that, you know, because these things have been operating since the 1970s, you know, it's proof that they'll operate now. Adherence to design and specification parameters were certified by the witness steam test before the valve left the Target Rock factory. The valves were assembled and tested under TRs, ASME. They're the private regulators, the private code makers. The nuclear industry pays these guys to write their codes for them. Section blah blah blah. The pilot valve and second stage assembly were steam tested at Target Rock to confirm steam pressure was 1% of 1,055. That was one. Number two, there was no evidence of material defect that would be a root cause at the onset of leakage. All components were found to be structurally sound. The only damage observed was the seat cutting that resulted from a pilot stage steam leakage described earlier. Like I said, a pilot stage, usually if the steam cuts gets bad enough, it either pops open on them and it causes an emergency, or when they're in an emergency, they'll try and open it and it won't open. And this has happened many a times in many circumstances. Peach Bottom in 2003, they had a terrible accident where two of their valves, one opened up on them, popped open on them, and another one wouldn't open when they called on it. It was a mess because of, you know, they not taking proper care of safety relief valves. In conclusion, the as found tests and inspections could find no evidence of a defect in design material or workmanship that could lead to the onset of leakage. A year from the first leakage, probably 2 weeks away from the second leakage, and another 2 weeks away from the third leakage, right? And these are nuclear power plant, prestigious nuclear industry organization. They have the local engineers, and they got the heavy dogs at corporate energy and stuff like that have experience out of the yin yang. And this is going on, I say it again, a year after the first one, within 2 weeks of the second one, and another 2 weeks for the third bad indication of the third safety relief valve. This is crazy, guys. And the NRC sits there and says, we really can't intervene in these things. We gotta let them do their own thing, and we really can't get into them until they get so deep in their shit that we're afraid of the public, and that's when we step in. We don't have the courage to create a converse. We don't have the courage to create a controversy for a plant by calling them on a problem. We can only wait till the crisis comes, and then we can, then we can identify the problems that caused the accident and stuff like that. They can't. The NRC is not allowed to be proactive. They're a reactive agency, and usually they'll hide if there's no problem show up and there's gross, obscene absurdities and inaccuracies. They won't say anything if there's not an accident. They'll just let it slide. So that's the following corrective the corrective extended condition, right? Excuse me, the extended condition. Is it the organization at fault? Is there an organizational problem that might lead them to make mistakes in other areas? Extended condition, extended cause. Might there be a problem with energy on receipt inspection of these valves and in the manufacturing processes of target rock? Might there be a defect that goes across all of the valves? And stuff like that. So you got to do an in-depth engineering evaluation. And they identified extended condition. The identified condition is a leaky SRV pilot. Based on a review of data, the only pilot to exhibit signs of leakage is RV 2003. Treat the D valve. The leaking valve has been replaced. The leaking valve has been replaced. There will be no more leakages in these new valves in Pilgrim plant. The next leak is 2 weeks. The next leak is 2 weeks away, and the next failure is 2 weeks away, and a shutdown. And the next failure is another 2 weeks away, and a fourth shutdown. The following. Additional corrective actions are recommended based on blah blah blah. Wild lead target energy and engineering assessment. No safety consequences. But what do they know what's going on there? They have no idea what's going on there. They're going to have 2 more failures, and everything is per specifications, and these valves work perfectly. So there's the. And here we go with the January 1st. This is the they don't have the LER out yet, the LER out yet, and this is the January 21, the 20th, 2003. They basically say there was leakages and they reached the limit and they were forced to shut down. And this event has no impact on health and safety. An incompetent organization has a hell of a lot of results on the health and safety of the public. You see what I mean? These guys look at risk as far as what components are how they relate to one another in a system. They don't look at risk of how an organization functions. Is an organization competent and flexible, and they go looking for problems, and they're proactive. They don't look at risk like that. They don't think of those kind of risk like that. They only think about if this component is broken for this long period of time, how it fits into the computer calculations is this way, and you're safe, and nothing ever matters, and just keep going on. So that's what we're dealing with. And the third one, basically February 3rd, basically the same thing. Just to get a recap, the D failed the first time, the B valve failed the second time, And then the third time the B failed again. They probably replaced the whole valve, but that steam line SRV failed again. So Energy has no. I mean, they have no evidence that if they purchase new three-stage target rock relief valves for Pilgrim, they would be defect-free. You know, how do you prove you had three brand new valves fail, and now you're going to have to order 4 more identical valves? How do you prove those valves aren't? How do you prove those valves are defect-free? So I think they were fiddling around, during the boondoggle with this valve was beginning to leak and all that sort of stuff. I think they were fiddling around, trying to order new valves, 4 new valves. They were delaying the shutdown because probably the valves weren't on site yet, and they were debating, should they replace them with identical, perfect valves, exactly like the new ones they ordered in 2011, right? The 3 of them failed, 75% failure rate, type of thing going on, and stuff like that. So they're in a pickle. This is so bad engineering wise. A real engineer that has integrity and honesty, and they're not paid for by, hasn't got his soul paid for by energy or the nuclear power industry would look at this and say, this is just ugly. It's just ugly. This is an accident waiting to happen, and if an organization does this kind of thing, it's ugly, and it's got to be corrected. It's got to be corrected. That first time, that first time they seen that valve fail, they should have a brand new valve fail. They should have moved heaven and earth to figure out why that valve failed, and not start it up until they knew why that valve failed and stuff. They should have moved heaven and earth to understand why that failed before they started up. But the regulations allow them to start up again and again with bad components, and then again, you see Wild Lab, you see the Energy Corporation, Southern companies involved with this, and the NRC and stuff. Well, where are they? These guys are supposed to have deep engineering experiences. Where were they? How come they didn't understand the boundaries of the problems? How come they didn't see? They see problems after problems after problems in the industry. And so then you kind of say there's a relatedness of all these problems, and you have a skill of assessing these problems, and you have a skill of being proactive. Knowing when you should stand back and it's not a problem, and then knowing when you got to jump into the problem proactively, and you got to push as hard as you can to find the problem. And fix it, and maintain the credibility of your facility and the NRC and your corporation and stuff like that. You got to protect the credibility of all these organizations. So where were all these highly educated engineers? They're all engineers involved in weighing what we should do and stuff like that. And how come nobody stepped up? How come the NRC didn't step up and fix this problem in the beginning? And it's a huge problem as far as, we know energy's bad, but how come these other other organizations were numb, and they couldn't figure out between right and wrong, and being competent engineers and knowing that something was wrong with systemically with target rock safety relief valves, and they weren't pushing for a solution instead of always putting in new bad valves in as replacements. And you think about it, before they shut down with this blizzard business, the A and C valves, that they hadn't leaked yet. The B and D, the D, B, B leaked before, and the A and C, A and C valves leaked and stuff. So in this shutdown, when they got to be 80% on February 30th and stuff like that, they called the B valve in-op right off the beginning, and then they backed off on it because it leaked or stopped leaking but they're afraid to go back up at 100% power. How could they do that? They were supposed to be shut down in 24 hours. How could they fiddle around for 2 days? And why were they fiddling around for 2 days? How come they didn't follow that tech spec requirement of shutting down within 24 hours if it exceeds this kind of a leakage rate? Even though the leak stopped, right? They didn't do nothing to fix it. When they went down to 80% power, okay, the leak stopped, but you notice a condition adverse to quality, right? The leak stopped, but then there's something still wrong in there and defective, and then you go back up to power and it starts leaking again, and then you come down to 80% power. Well, where's that 24-hour clock? How come that 24-hour clock didn't come in and say, okay, we got to be shut down, or we should have been shut down within 24 hours? Type of thing. How come they get to have this flexibility now? It's in up one moment and then it's broken and not in the next moment and stuff like that. Why didn't they take the conservative route and shut down when they were supposed to? Why did it? Why did they have to wait until a blizzard shut them down? Why did they have to take their offsite power fluctuating and damaging their plant before they shut down? You see what I'm saying? You see how this, the competency of the dealing with the SRVs and the competency of acting conservatively on shutting down the plant before the blizzard, and then you look at the competency even at power operations right at the blizzard time when they should have known to shut down. Imagine how safe and good they would have looked at 2 days before this. They would have shut down for the blizzard and been shut down during the blizzard. Then you can never get a Mike Mulligan out there complaining about having bad relief valves during a blizzard type of situation and stuff like that. You're protecting your honor and integrity when you act conservatively and you risk a couple of pennies of profits. And you shut down conservatively, and then you can use that as tools and weapons in the future. We acted conservatively on this one. We're good guys and don't cause us any grief and type of stuff. But instead, it always takes a plant trip to shut those guys down. Well. Thank you very much. Again, Mike Mulligan here, and it'd be interesting how these safety relief valves turn out when energy will start up again. The Energy Today talked about. They just had a recent article in the New York. In the Boston Globe, and they talked about the relief. They're going to have to find out what caused all this grief with the relief valves. It'll be interesting what to replace them with and stuff like that. I call for a special inspection for the safety relief valves, new safety relief valves. 75% of them failing before the end of one cycle. I call for a special inspection there. I call for another special inspection with how they dealt with this blizzard. But I don't have any influence. Mike Mulligan here. Thank you.